Hello everybody, welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing a review of the brand new film from the Daily Wire called Shut In, which is a new thriller from them. It's the second film that they have put out on their platform as they have moved, obviously with a main focus still being on news and commentary, to trying to create and impact culture through things like film and I think eventually maybe even television. And we'll go ahead and talk about exactly how I feel about this one, especially in comparison to the first film, which they didn't produce but they distributed exclusively on their platform. I believe this one might actually be the first that they were actually a main producer on. So before getting further into this review, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So the movie Shut In stars Rainey Qualley, Jake Horowitz, and Vincent Gallo. Really not very well-known names, not household names by any means, but I think that all three of these actors, the main actors in the film, including even the young child, the young actress who plays the daughter in the film, I think they all actually do a very good job as far as the acting in this film. It is definitely not Oscar-worthy by any means, and by that, obviously, used to mean something to say something was Oscar-worthy, but I think that they get the job done. They're not just reading the script. They aren't just actors that have no training whatsoever and are just, randomly picked. They were obviously chosen for their specific roles. They obviously fit those roles well enough for them to be cast in this film, and I think that they do a great job. I think Rainey Qualley especially is the standout of the bunch. I think that she does an excellent job as being a young mother. And it says right here in the description, right, it's a young mother being barricaded inside a pantry by her violent ex-boyfriend. She uses ingenuity to protect her two small children from escalating danger while finding an escape. And so this is a thriller by all intents and purposes. And even though I would say that the story is by far the weakest element of this film, obviously because this is a story that doesn't necessarily bridge any new ground or new territory. It definitely is not something that is revolutionary in the thriller genre. I think that it is definitely not a couple things. One, it's not an offensive addition to the genre, so it's not an offensive thriller by any means. So it's not a movie you're going to watch and say, man, I wish I had that 90 minutes back. And it's also a film that is able to, I think, hit all of the notes in just the right way to make most people who watch it have a good time with it. Now, again, it's not going to make everyone happy. I put a mini review out on Instagram, and one of the first comments was, you're a lot more kind than I was, and they ended up giving the film, somewhere in the C range, and I understand where they're coming from, but it's not necessarily that I'm being too polite or too kind to the film. It's just that when I go into a film, especially when I go in blind to a film, other than just a basic premise, and even this one, I barely knew the premise going into it, which I actually might think probably helped in my enjoyment of the film. I just knew that it was the next film in the series of films coming out this year from the Daily Wire. It's crazy that they actually have, I think, at least two more films coming out. I know that, of course, they got the one with Gina Carano coming out, but then there's another one set to come out, the Hyperions, which, if you've not seen the trailer for that, oh man, that actually looks very exciting as well. But this, I think, is a very great start for them as an actual production company. The first film they did was Run, Hide, Fight, which was, I believe, just distributed by them. They didn't have actual anything to do with the actual production of the film. It was a film that was being shopped around. They bought the rights to it and distributed on their platform. And that film was okay. It also kind of had its moments, definitely had that indie feel to it. And I mean, at the end of the day, these are independent films, right? These are not in the Hollywood system. These are outside of the Hollywood system. And so it's going to have, and all of them are going to have that indie feel. But this one, I think, in comparison to Run, Hide, Fight, I think has a lot better as far as production value. I think the production design is a lot better. The sound design is a lot better. The cinematography, I think, is also a lot better as well. The way that they are able to have all these different elements within the actual pantry that she is stuck in for the vast majority of the film, I think that they do a very good job as far as placing certain items in certain locations and the meanings behind those items. And there's certain revelations with some of those items that connect her to a relative who had passed away recently, and I thought that that was also something very powerful. And one of the really lasting messages of the film is about how we are all far from perfect, and even if we do have imperfections, even if we do make mistakes, as long as we focus on those good things, right? Until we're actually fully rotten to the core, as it were, as we see with some of the other characters in the film. If we just have a part of us that is rotten, we can focus on those good things, and we can cut those negative parts out of our life. And I think that was actually a really good message. So even though the story is by no means anything revolutionary, I do think that the story is well done. It's well paced. It's, I think, something, again, not offensive in any way to the thriller genre, and also has a good message, which is something that is not very common in a lot of the modern day thrillers that we have, right? A lot of the modern day thrillers rely on the shocking, right, the shock horror, or they rely on just, again, random kind of tropey elements. And there's not to say that there's not thriller tropes here, but there aren't any jump scares, for instance, right? There's not a focus on trying to get you with these different jump scare elements. Instead, it's one of those things where you are seeing this through the eyes of this woman as she is trying to figure out what to do, how to protect her family, how to protect her daughter, how to talk to her daughter, who is got to be, maybe 3 or 4 in the film. Got, again, very young daughter there, trying to essentially coach her from inside this pantry of how to take care of the baby, right? Because there's also this little baby that needs to be taken care of, and also she has to still understand that even though we see from her eyes that she is trapped and she can't get out, the daughter doesn't understand that, right? She doesn't have the full concept of exactly what is going on, right? So there's this instances where you have lines, for instance, where the daughter will say things like, "It's like, oh, is he a bad man? Is he a good guy?" Right? Because that's where she is in her development. So as someone who is a father watching my own son grow and develop, it was actually really interesting just to see that kind of attention to detail in that instance, in the writing of even just the character of the daughter, which I thought was very well. And again, the young actress they got to played the character exactly as a young child would act. And so I thought that was, again, going back to the acting, again, really top marks there. So production value, as I said, production design, very good. Cinematography also not distracting. I think that it was adding to the film more so than it would be anything as far as detracting or taking away from the film. And overall, I would say it's a good time. If you're someone that you like a general thriller, if you're someone who on a rainy day just wants to put on a thriller that you've never seen before and say, oh yeah, you know what, I kind of like that, this is the kind of film for you, right? So it's not going to blow you away. It's not going to win any awards. Obviously, it's being shut out, interestingly enough, with the name Shut In. It's being shut out by critics pretty much for the most part. I know that on Rotten Tomatoes, there are some critics that have put some scores out there, some Rotten Tomatoes certified people that have put out scores, and guess what? They've actually been positive. And I know that Hollywood is obviously ignoring them. And to me, films like this are so much more important, not just because they're being made and not just because they are being made, pretty well. Again, maybe not to the same caliber as some of the films that you might see in a typical AMC or Regal theater, but I would say pretty darn close. Like, this to me as a film, I think they've reached the point now, as far as this being kind of the first produced film, where this being a limited release in theaters actually would make sense, and I think would actually be enjoyed by a fair amount of people. And so I think that it's interesting, though, that films like this, which, again, are a little bit more difficult to see, right? A little bit more difficult to see. They don't get the access media, right? So the access media would have to actually be a part of and be a subscriber to the Daily Wire, which, for full disclosure, I am a subscriber, which is how I was able to get access to the film. So it makes sense that they would not have a lot of reviews, but it also would make sense as to why they would try to ignore it. I mean, there's been people on social media who are critics and who are a part of the Hollywood machine who have actually called for people to actively ignore this film, to actively ignore everything the Daily Wire is doing. And I think that just kind of shows their cards. It kind of shows exactly what this Hollywood complex has been in. And also, I think, should call into question any and all reviews that are put out on these major channels, right? Whether it be Metacritic or especially Rotten Tomatoes, or from these major newspapers or from these major critics, because to me, it just shows that they are willing to, when the money is right, when the access is right, go out of their way to either praise or even in certain cases condemn certain films. They tend to praise films that fit more in line with their own political philosophy than anything else. Even though one could argue, well, aren't you a little bit more aligned with their political philosophy? Well, I've always seen myself as a lot more of an independent person, but even I noticed that there are indeed actual objective criticisms that can be made for this film, which is why I've called them out here. But the fact that it's kind of being blacklisted in a certain way, in certain respects, is really sad. And it's also one of the challenges the Daily Wire is going to have to face, is because they're going to have to try and say to actors or to producers or to directors, hey, this is going to be something you're going to have to worry about. This is going to be something that could have an impact on you, whether you want to be involved with them or not. As you can see, 10 ratings from Metacritic, has it an 8.6. Last I checked, the Rotten Tomatoes score, I believe, was around 98% or so. So most people that are getting to see this film are overall enjoying it. This says here that Film Threats, so we have here some friends of Friday Night Tights here. So DJ Caruso masterfully orchestrates the symphony of suspense, albeit a 20-piece orchestra, but a symphony nonetheless. So again, giving some praise to this. They need 3 more reviews in order for them to be able to get this. There are, I think, at least a few more reviews that are Rotten Tomatoes certified, that I think could possibly get them to get a score for this film finally out there. But I think that it was a fun film, and I think that most people would enjoy getting it. Now, should you buy into the Daily Wire to get access to it? Again, if you're someone that wants to support independent media creators, if you're someone that wants to support kind of this new age and new era of people like the Daily Wire saying, hey, if they're not going to create the content, we're going to create the content. We're going to build the infrastructure. We're going to actually do something about it. We're going to actually put out films and produce films. I think this is a fine film for you to jump in on. I would say that Run, Hide, Fight has some moments that are worth talking about. But again, as I said, that was not really one that was produced by Daily Wire, but more so distributed by them. But also to look forward to some of the other films that they have going forward, right? So again, Rainey Qualley does a great job. Jake Horowitz, who plays the husband, I think that he does a great job. Vincent Gallo, very understated performance here as kind of the friend in the film. As you can see, Terror on the Prairie, there is a trailer for that. And this one, I will say I'm cautiously optimistic. Obviously, we could talk about there being a Gina Carano bias from me and from others that are looking forward to this film. I do think there is a lot to be excited for, especially the stunt team and the stunt coordinators on this film, because that is, I think, something that was really shown in the trailers. The one I'm actually most excited about, and I'm actually very surprised by who's in the film. Carrie Ewells, I did not expect to be in a film produced by the Daily Wire. So I'm going to have to dive further into exactly the relationship between this specific film and this, because if you see the trailer for this, it is actually really well-made trailer, and it's actually incredibly interesting, and it's essentially a superhero story, but it's done in such a different way. It's comedic throwback, it seems, in a certain way. And overall, I'm actually looking forward more to the Hyperions, and that's going to be coming sooner. That's going to be coming in March. That's the next film they have on their release, and then in the summer, we'll have Terror on the Prairie. So I'm looking forward to both of these films, and all I can say is they're going in the right direction. Shut In, I think, is a great thriller film. It looks like they'll have another thriller with Terror on the Prairie. They'll be taking, it looks like, an attempt at action and comedy with the Hyperions, and if this is the direction they're going in, I think that they're in a pretty good direction. So as I said, overall, if I had to talk a little bit more about this film, I would say it's got some pretty solid acting. Again, not the best in the world necessarily, but definitely some actors that are not totally green, but are definitely capable of playing the characters that they are playing. The story is nothing original. The story definitely has some issues to it, but in general, I would say that there is enough there to keep most people, most general audiences, pretty entertained and pretty engrossed in the actual story itself. I know that for me, I was very invested in what was going on in the story, even though it may not be, again, the most suspenseful film that I've ever seen. And the production design and the cinematography, I think, also really add to the overall story. They do a very good job with it. But again, really that performance, I think, from Rainey Qualley does a great job with this. And so overall, I'm going to give this film a solid B. Again, great second film from the Daily Wire. This one actually produced by them, and very excited to see what they have going on in the future. Anyway, have you seen Shut In? Do you have any plans to see Shut In? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if you like this video, please make sure you smash that like button, lap that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey. And also make sure you check out that pinned comment at the top of the comments, because that will have your link so that you can vote in this year's Wednesday Raven Awards. That's right, we do our own Oscars boycott to promote films that typically don't get attention from the Oscars, but even films like this, I would say that this would be a fair contender for certain categories, breakout stars, for instance, things like that, in the future for next year's Raven Awards, and one to keep in mind. So let me know your thoughts about that, and again, make sure you click on that link and vote. We've had about 40 people or so vote so far, and we'd love to see more people vote. That's going to be open up for another month or so. As I said, we go up against and try and boycott the Oscars and go at the same time as the Oscars as a way of giving people some alternate entertainment where you have the voice, and we have a lot of fun with it as well. So anyway, let me know your thoughts. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my Patreon Subscribestar and Locals members, starting off with Patreon animation commentator Brandon, let's go Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father. Father Damian Cook, Fuzz Aldrin, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Hymir Ari Hymason, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyles 79, Laura, The Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ellen, Stan Andrian, Teresa Martin, or Miss Martin Muses, Theodore Benden, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. Thank you very much for supporting me over on Patreon. Also to my Subscribestar peeps, UAB Mad Dog, which is Mr. Mike Jackson, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stand 4, John B., Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the Subscribestar platform. And to my 3 local supporters, we got Kara Tharp, UAB Mad Dog, which is once again Mike Jackson, super supporter over there, and Robert Barnes. Thank you very much for supporting me over on the Locals platform. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, please think about signing up on either of those platforms. You can find a link in the description below that will lead you to all of those different pages. It is known as the Willow link, as it is w.lo link, and it will have all the links to that, to the Discord channel, to all different kinds of places, including places to support me as well. At the Citizen of Asgardian level, you get Citizen of Asgardian level is how it's labeled on Patreon. Still need to fix that, but Citizen of Asgard level, you get a shout out at the end of every live stream and video. If you join at the Army of Asgard level, you also access to a giveaways channel, which is featured on the Discord that I have. I know, River, it is very exciting. It is so exciting, where you get giveaways for things like 4K titles, Steelbook titles, etc. Again, I got some 4K Steelbooks of The Punisher, for instance. I've got 4Ks of tons of other movies, so I'm giving those away all the time. So if that sounds interesting to you, join the Army of Asgard level. Also, at the Keep of the Bifrost level, you get all of that stuff, plus you get access to a once a month and maybe twice a month. We're trying to add an extra podcast in there of me and John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where we talk about movies, and also you get to ask your questions. Any questions that you want to ask, you get to ask with that podcast. And then you have the Chosen of Valhalla level, which gives you access to all of those, and also a once a month podcast where you get to be featured with me on the main channel. We all get to talk together about movies, culture, pop culture, anything really that the Chosen want to talk about, or anything the Chosen want to promote is on the table. So if you like that, join at the Chosen of Valhalla level. Also, during your first month of support, you get a free t-shirt. Any t-shirt that you want from the main store, you get access to, and I do ship internationally anywhere in the world. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.